Now we're going to look at indicators of the giraffe's size. You've already seen the one on the left, which is torso and arm elongation. The one on the right complements that with leg elongation. Her legs are more than twice the length of her torso, which I measure from the hips to the shoulders. If her torso is about 2 feet long, that puts her legs at 4 feet, and the neck and head at least a foot. So in total, she must be over 7 feet tall, and that's with the torso at its human size. If you put the elongated torso and legs together, the total height must be over 8 feet, or 2.5 meters. Here's the male imitation with an elongated lower abdomen and groin, as well as legs and forearms. He's also reverting the shape of his pelvis and legs, so it's clear that it's not a human body. I didn't put that sensor mark there, but judging by how small it is, it's very likely that he's ungenerated his penis and testicles. Obviously, they can't show themselves without genitals, so I understand why he covered that up. Of course, we know they don't have external genitals in their native forms. The sex organs are inside the abdomen, and the groin is blank. The camera is at Sigourney's shoulder, so this would be the viewpoint of someone who's about 5 feet tall. Judging by this, the newborn could be close to 10 feet tall, or 3 meters. I saw a video in which one of them claimed that he's a 10-foot tall Arcturian, and now I know that he was telling the truth. "10 feet looks plausible in this shot as well. My guess is that a creature of this size with a large tail would weigh somewhere between 600 and 800 pounds, 270 to 360 kilograms. Most reptiles continue to grow as they age, and the same may be true of the drax. I wouldn't be surprised if the elders were considerably larger than this. I know now that all of these giant humans are drax. Humans don't get this big. Robert Wadlow on the left was almost 9 feet tall, so his human imitation form was close to his natural height as a drac. And he was still growing at the time he supposedly died. He's reverting his left ankle joint in this photo to show that he's a drac. The other one, Johan Peterson, is also reverting his ankle joints, where his lower legs are clearly bent forward below the knees. So you have this creature that's at least twice the size of a human that can compress its body down to human size. And they can actually compress down to much smaller forms than that. Now I'm going to show examples of compression on their human imitation forms, which will demonstrate the extent of this ability. This one is compressing the circumference of her waist and lower rib cage. At the same time, it also looks like she's increased the size of her breasts, so her body looks very unbalanced. These three are compressing their entire torsos, at least from front to back. Of course, their internal organs have compressed to smaller sizes as well. Here's one showing side-to-side compression in the bottom half of the rib cage. So as you can see, they could compress to a very small circumference. These These are more extreme examples of torso compression. The one on the left has opened the rib cage and compressed all the way inside, so you can see the inner side of the ribs. The one in the middle has compressed the entire rib cage while keeping it closed. The soft tissue in the abdomen is compressed inside the pelvic bone, and that's the same on all of them. All of the organs have flattened out in there. This must have some negative effect on their functionality, so they wouldn't want to stay in this compressed state for too long. When your heart and lungs are compressed like this, it would certainly reduce your energetic capacity. This one has compressed the abdomen, but left the rib cage at its normal size, so there's a very abrupt drop at that point. You'd never see this on a human body because the abdominal muscles wouldn't collapse like that, nor the internal organs. The arm is showing compression in circumference and length, and the clavicle muscle is being reverted. The thigh is being reverted as well, as you can see the inner bone separating. She's compressed her upper arm down to less than 2 inches in diameter, and the lower half of her forearm has become blade-shaped. She's also reverting the bulge at the elbow, and the man on the left is reverting the folds on his neck and cheek. Frequently you'll see shape-shifting on the secondary people in a photo, and they're doing that to let you know that the subject in the photo is also a drac shape-shifting. The one on the left has compressed his legs to about half the circumference of his arms. He's also compressed his lower abdomen, pelvis, and buttocks. On the one on the right, you can tell the original circumference of her legs by the size and shape of the shorts. When she shifts her legs back to their normal sizes, they'll fill out that empty space in the shorts. Also notice that her right lower leg is curved forward, though it doesn't appear to be an ankle reversion. This male imitation has compressed his legs to extremely short legs, in addition to the circumference. You can see how tiny he would be if he compressed his entire body like this. You should also be able to recognize that he's reverting his shoulders and elbows. This one has compressed her thighs in one dimension, front to back, while leaving the length and width unchanged. She's also elongated her left lower leg, and it's developed a forward bend at about the midpoint, possibly an ankle reversion. Here's a before and after showing torso compression and slight reversion in the pelvis. She's also reverting the veins in her abdomen. This one has compressed all of the soft tissue in her body, so it's nearly down to the skeleton. If she were human, she wouldn't even be able to stand up at this point. In fact, she would have died from organ failure long before this. After this picture was taken, she went somewhere private and decompressed back to her normal human imitation form. These three have compressed their arms down to the point where they basically generate them. It's just a hand attached to the shoulder. The one on the left is demonstrating that his hands are functional, which would be impossible with the human body. You need the muscles in your forearm to motivate your wrist and fingers. They won't work without the structure and length they need to contract properly. The dracs can do this because in their plasticized forms, Their bodies are not motivated by muscle mechanics. They're using their polymorphic ability to move the tissue around. It simulates muscular action, but it doesn't have the mechanical limitations of a real muscle. I know that they can compress limbs to ungenerate them, because I've seen this in person. Last year I saw a man with a compressed forearm, where his hand was basically attached to his elbow. As I walked by, he dangled it at me so I'd see it, and as he walked away, his forearm elongated back to its normal length. Then he looked back at me and nodded. Now you're seeing the same kind of compression on legs, where the feet are attached to the hips. He's also reverting the creases on his neck and the right clavicle muscle, and that's to show that he's a drac, and that what you're looking at is shape-shifting. Officially, they call it a disease, but again, it's actually shape-shifting. It's a drac that's compressed the length of its fingers. The only disease you can call it is lycanthropy, but even then, it's not a disease that you can catch. It's an ability that you're born with and have full control over. Here's another one doing face pulling, and it should be clear that it is physically impossible for a human to do this. You cannot pull your jaw over your nose. What you're looking at is a drac that's compressed the middle of its face. This one's compressed his entire body, but unlike real dwarf types, his body proportions are close to those of a normal person. I have no doubt that he could get even smaller than this, but there's a limit to what they're willing to show. We know he could compress his arms and legs to almost nothing, and then he'd only be about a foot tall. The limiting factor is how much the internal organs could be compressed. As to how this compression takes place at the cellular level, I have no idea. Just that it would involve the alteration of the molecular structure. Every molecule in their bodies is being compressed, and at the same time, the weight decreases with the volume. This appears to violate the law of conservation of mass, but it doesn't, because they're not actually losing molecules. I have personal experience with individuals increasing their weight but not their size, so they can change their perceived weight at will. It's just that it's not sensible for them to walk around in their human imitation forms weighing 600 pounds. Here's another example of full body compression, maybe even slightly smaller than the one before. That's the world's shortest woman with the world's tallest model, and they're both dracs. In their native forms, they're probably about the same size. I doubt that she's an exceptionally small drac in her native form. You're just seeing different levels of compression. If the big one is compressed about 50%, the other one is compressed at least 90%. These two have compressed their torsos and other parts, but not their heads. Once again, the official explanation is Agent Orange deformities. Here's another one with a compressed body and relatively normal head. She's described as having only one limb, her right arm. But looking at this, it's clear that she also has a left arm and both legs, though they're obviously deformed from their normal human imitation forms. Her torso is about the size of a bowling ball, but I think that the organs could be compressed even further. I was looking for an example of one without arms or legs, that had a highly compressed torso with a normal-sized head, but I couldn't find that. Again, you can see shape-shifting on the secondary individual in the photos, the right photo in particular. She's compressed her right forearm and wrist, which look like they're about half the circumference of her left arm. Now we're going to look at decompression or expansion from the human imitation form. The cells and molecules are returning to their original sizes from a compressed state. Like the decompressed vein I showed earlier, it's clear looking at this that it's a very large, perhaps even gigantic creature. It's possible that they can actually expand their bodies beyond the natural size. That may be what we're seeing here. So if that's true, they'd be able to imitate creatures that are larger than themselves. Arm compression next to decompression or expansion, and they can reverse their compression states at any time. He could make his arms look like hers, and vice versa.